Okay guys, we're going to do another layer of the resin fish painting. So the first thing we're going to do, like all the other layers, is we're going to grab a little bit of paint. We're going to put a base down where we're going to paint on top of. You can kind of see where my last layer was, so we're just going to do that, except we're going to do it not all the way to the edges. This layer is actually going to be quite small, as you can see. That's all we're painting on that fish right now. Again, with every single layer, we're painting less and less. We're still painting baby fish, but we're painting less and less on the big fish because we want that dimensional, like almost pyramid effect for it. There we go. Alright, now that I have a layer of paint down that we're going to paint on top of. Alright, once you put the layer of paint down, which I'm just adding a little bit more right now, so we have something to grab onto. I'm using kind of a dryish brush just to move the paint around without removing too much of the paint I just put down. There we go. So now that we have that done, we're going to wait for that to dry, and while we wait for that to dry, we might as well add some baby fish, which we're going to do orange, and let's see, let's look and see where we're gonna put these baby fish. Let's see. I want one right there. You see how empty it is right there? How about we put one there? This one's gonna be a little bit of a bigger baby fish. If I'm doing a bigger baby fish, I'm gonna paint it a lot like I'm doing the big fish in general. And we're going to put a base down and then add details later. Let me just make that tail a little bit thinner because this is kind of a thick baby fish right now. Alright, there we go. Thick with 2 C's, now gone down to thick with 1 C. That's perfect. Alright, so that's one baby fish that we're going to add details to in a second. Let's add another baby fish, and I'm feeling like we can use one maybe around here. Yeah, that's a good spot for one. It's right there, don't you think? And we'll go ahead and paint this guy. Ooh, I globbed a lot of paint on this one. Maybe just a little bit bigger. Just like that. Alright, let's go ahead and add another baby fish. Where are we going to do this one? Let's add a baby fish. How about a couple on the edges here? I don't have very many on these edges right over here. And that'll be nice because it'll cast more of a shadow on the side of the bowl, depending on where you look at it. So we do want it to be kind of all over the place a little bit. That way we get so many different 3D effects. Lots more detail, a lot more interest in it. There's one baby fish that we're going to put right there. I don't know if you guys saw that. Yeah, you did. And let's go ahead and put another baby fish. How about right in here? Doesn't that look like that's where one needs to go? Alright, so we'll put the little head and the tail. I don't mind too much when I'm painting the baby fish, what I'm doing. It's not really something that we're gonna focus on or do a lot of details on because they are so small, but we do want them to look still kind of good. Let's add a fish over here, shall we? Now, a lot of these baby fish on this layer are kind of the same size, which is okay. This is a size that I'm kind of comfortable with right now. I'm feeling it today, so that's what we're going to do. Alright, and we obviously need one over here as well, don't we? Right? Yeah, over here. Make this one maybe a little bit bigger. Just like that. All right, and I'm looking and I'm liking that amount of fish. Maybe I'll add a small one there. What do you think? Let me see. Maybe one right there. A small. No, maybe I'll do it on the next layer. Maybe on the next layer I'll put more fish near the big fish. Add a little bit more interest. So now that the fish on our big fish, or the paint on the big fish, is dry, we can go ahead and start adding details to this, making it look a little bit more like scales. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so for this fish right here, what I'm gonna do, let's see, I'm trying to find out what brush I'll use for this part. Very difficult, very difficult. I'll do this one. Alright, so what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna mix a little bit of gold and orange to make a little bit darker. And we're gonna add a little bit of an impression of where the scales are gonna go. Actually, that's actually a really pretty color for the pop, but I don't want that because I don't want it to be too different from the other layers. Again, we want the colors to be pretty similar from layer to layer. The bottom layers, it's okay for them to be different because they're not quite visible, but the top layers, very important. Alright, so that softened that a little bit. You know what, while I wait for that to dry, let me just add a couple impressions of the white while we wait for that to dry. Alright, isn't that nice? I quite like that. Alright, while we wait for that to dry, let's go back to the baby fish again and add some details to them. And I think I'll do quite similar to the big fish in the way that I add details to kind of these larger baby fish. I'm gonna add a bit of sparkle. Again, when you guys do it, you might not want to add sparkle if you are actually following along to make one of these. I add the sparkle because I like sparkle, but it isn't exactly a realistic aspect of the fish. I mean, it is a little bit because scales do shine, but they don't sparkle, and these are definitely sparkles that I'm adding. Alright, just like that. Alright, coming back to the larger fish here, let's go ahead and add some pops of the orange. Actually, I think, do I need to mix a little bit of yellow with this orange? I might actually, huh? Alright, I mixed a little bit of yellow with the orange just to brighten it up just a smidgen. And should I add a little bit of gold? Why not? Why not? Alright. Now this is gold, yellow, and orange mixed together, and I'm just going to add impression of scales all across the back and down. I should really be getting a little bit more detail than this, but I'll do that in a second when I grab the dark and I put it underneath the scales. So I'm kind of doing it a little bit of a slow way, but it's been a while since I painted, so I'll use that as my excuse right now. Alright, so now that that's done, let's go ahead and add some impressions of scales to the baby fish here. Again, I really need to actually grab some dark to be able to start doing this. At this point, I'm just building paint up, which is nice because it's a lot easier to paint when the paint is built up a little bit. but oops, that one quite wasn't dry yet, so I just almost, I kind of erased this baby fish right here, if you could see that on camera. Oh no. It's fine. We'll add a little bit more paint to him once he's dry. Alright, so I'm gonna start mixing a dark color just so I can start getting details onto this guy. So how about I add gold and orange. Okay, and then just grab a touch of silver to darken it up just a bit. Maybe a little bit of copper too. That's kind of a darkish color. Alright, and now I'm gonna actually force myself to do some details here. Can you guys see that with that horrible glare? There we go. Bit hard to see, I'm sorry about that. Alright, so we're just gonna add, I use a super thin brush for this part. There we go. This is the brush that I needed all along. Something a lot thinner. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna add little shapes to make it seem like they're scales, the shadow of scales. And then we're gonna come back and put brighter orange behind these, make it seem even better. And as we come up to the front, we want the scales to be a little bit smaller near the face. We don't have very many near the face right now, but we'll do a few like that. Alright, so let's grab pure silver and do a little impression behind the white spots now. Just like that. Alright. Okay, now let me force myself to do that to some of the larger baby fish here. So for this one especially, we're just gonna add little scales on this guy. Just like that, so he's got a little bit of texture to him. It's hard to see on camera. Let me see if I can spin that so you can see it a little bit better. Very hard to see that, but there are impressions of scales. I'm using a 50mm lens right now to get you as close as possible to the action. Just like that. These ones are a little bit smaller. I'm not doing as much detail on the extra small ones. You don't need to. Maybe if you're trying to go really photorealistic, you would. But in reality, I'm not good enough to do photorealistic. We're just kind of doing impressions of scales on these guys. Just like that. Alright. And since we're here and we're still waiting for this to dry just a bit, why don't we add impressions of tails as well? So I'm grabbing some of that orange and yellow mixture I had from before. And I'm just gonna add, oops, that's way too yellow, isn't it? Alright, how's that? No, a little bit more orange. And I know I've shown you this in every single video, but it's very easy to erase. Just grab a paper towel, dampen it a bit if you need to remove a lot of paint, or if you need to remove dry paint. And we're just gonna do an impression of tails. And little fins. And a little dorsal fin on that one right there. And I'm gonna grab just a wet brush and I'm gonna blend out that tail a bit. Blend out the fins a bit. Just like that. So it's a nice small baby fish with a bit of detail. All right, let's just go around and add a little bit more of that fin action to some of these other fish. I want the fins to be a little bit transparent. That's why I'm not doing like a full glob of paint. I want them to be a little transparent. You still want to be able to see them. And as you put as you put resin down, it does mask a little bit what you did. So just remember that when you're going transparent, you want to go transparent, but you don't want to go too transparent. Otherwise, you put the resin down and all of a sudden you can't see anything that you just did. You'll notice as paint dries, it creates this weird filter, like a white filter almost. That goes away once you put the resin down. So you have to imagine some of your color is going to be, it's going to go a little transparent as well when you put resin down. So we want to be transparent, but we don't want to be too transparent. I'm not very good at deciphering what's too transparent, so it's more of like a skill experience thing that I haven't gotten yet, but it just takes time, I think. Just like that. You can even see on some of my fish way down low, with so many layers of resin on top, you're starting to not be able to see their tails or their fins anymore. So that's another reason you might want to go a little bit thicker. Maybe not so close to the surface like I'm doing right now, but a little bit thicker is good. See, that's looking quite nice. Let me see if I can wipe this tail away just a bit. You can always soften things up by using water and a dry brush to remove the water and remove some of the paint with it as well, or paper towel. Oof, I think I've totally mangled this tail. Let me restart that. Easy to restart. Alright, so let me grab a little bit of orange paint. Just like that. Cute. And I'm looking around making sure I didn't miss any baby fish, because I do that often. Alright, since I haven't, I'm going to go back to my fish and I'm going to grab a more bright orange, which is just orange mixed with a bit of yellow. I'm going to grab and put little dots where I want the, let me move this so you can see it, where I want the scales to be, which are going to be right behind, or I'm sorry, right in front of the lines that I did before for the dark. Just like that. And let me just darken some of this just a bit. I'm grabbing a little bit of a darker color to go behind them one more time. And just some of these spots are a bit light, and I want that to be a bit darker, just like that. Alright, and as I'm turning it, I see a little gap right here where there needs to be a white spot, because you always need to be turning your painting when you're doing it. So I'm looking at the camera right now to do this instead of at the painting itself, so that almost filled it in. Yeah, that filled it in a bit. Let me soften those a bit. There we go, just like that. And as you turn it, you see that side blends just perfect. No need to fix that. There we go. It was this part that I'm a little bit concerned about, but I think it's, oof, I just dropped a bunch of water on my painting. There we go. But I think it's gonna be fine. All right, So that's just about done. I'm going to soften and darken into that a little bit more in a second, but let me go ahead and add more details to the baby fish, including the eyes. Alright, so I've got a nice dark brown paint, and I'm just going to add eyeballs on our fish here. Some of these fish are not cute. Oops, I missed a fin or two on this one right here. You see that? See, I have such a bad habit of forgetting about my baby fish sometimes. I like that color too. Instead of using like black, like I have been a couple times, more of a dark brown really works. All right, let's give this poor fish some fins here. Using a lot of water right now and removing some of that water. And let me just glob a little bit of orange paint just on the sides here. There we go. A little bit right on his head right there. And a little bit on his head right here. If you put it directly on top of the eyes too, it kind of looks like you've got eyelids on your fish, which is nice. And a little bit on the eyes right here. And this one too, this one's looking a little bit googly. Just like that. Alright, in a second I'm going to go back and add just a couple more details and then soften the lines on this, and this layer is done. You can see it gets quicker and quicker the farther along you get. Okay, let's go ahead and add a little bit of my favorite part, which is just a bit of gold shimmer to some of my baby fish here. Adds a little extra shine, and I'm kind of adding it in dots right now, so it almost looks like it's shining off the scales just a bit. And that's quite pretty. Alright, let me add a little bit more to another fish here. This one, which didn't get a lot of love, is now getting a lot of love from a bit of gold. It's a bit smaller. I'm not adding as much detail to that one. And this one is quite ugly, so we'll add a bit of gold to him. And let me just fix his, fix his shit right here. And let me erase that bit right on the side that I messed up with. Just like that. It is so easy to erase with resin. That might be why I like doing it so much, because I'm not the best and I make a lot of mistakes, so it's very easy to literally erase in a second without destroying paper, without doing anything like that. It's just quite simple. I'm trying to add a little bit of orange back to this one because they are glowing like a disco ball on this one. There we go, that's a bit better. And a bit of gold to this one right here. And let me just blend out with a bit of orange. There we go. I can blend this one out with a bit of orange too. It is my favorite and it is quite sparkly, but it is very sparkly. Alright, let me double check I haven't missed any baby fish. I'm looking quite okay right now. Let me put a bit of orange on top of those eyeballs for that one. Let me spin her. Looks good from all angles. And let me just add a touch of gold to the big fish here, just a touch. So I'm grabbing some water and just a touch of gold paint, adding it to the top of my orange scales here. Just a touch more. This is where I always accidentally do too much. That's quite nice. I actually really like that. See that? Very nice. All right, so I'm liking. Do I want to add maybe a second layer to this fish right here because it's so close to the surface? Maybe I'll add just like a little impression of a dorsal fin on that one. And then I'll check if there's any more that need something. Just like that. I'll blend out the edges in a second. And then, here's a tip. If you can't tell how deep something is, put your brush down and see if it's almost touching or if it's actually like an inch deep. Because sometimes it's actually really hard to tell. And I just noticed a baby fish that I forgot right over here. You guys can't see that? You guys are forgetting about her too. Right there. And let me add a couple eyes on this one. There we go. Alright, and I'm looking. Dropped a bit of water. This one could use a little bit of a dorsal fin. Not a lot, just a touch. Alright, perfect. Now what I'm going to do, now that I've added a little bit of a dorsal fin to some of these, is I'm just going to soften some of the edges. We want it to pop out just a bit 3D, not too much on these small tiny fish. Because they already get that 3D effect just from being multiple depths. I mean. Just like that. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Let me soften the edge of this a little bit. Again, to soften, you just grab a brush with some water and you move it around just a bit. Not too much, or else you'll start erasing. And very light pressure, otherwise you're going to start literally grabbing chunks of dry paint up, because they don't stick very well to the surface of this. Alright, so now that that is pretty much done, we're going to go ahead and add a layer of resin, and we'll wait 24 hours before we can do the next layer. Let me just add a touch of gold. Remember how I said this is where I accidentally do too much? This is where I accidentally do too much. Alright, cool. Alright. Alright, and we're going to mix until it's gone clear, as usual. And I do have heat gun here. Let me turn that on, get it ready to go. And we're just going to continue mixing till it's clear. If you don't have a heat gun, do how I used to mix, where you mix it very, very slowly to avoid bubbles, which honestly I think in general you should do. But I still, I can still get rid of a few bubbles with the heat gun. And when you're mixing in these cups, you see this has like a little ledge at the bottom. you want to actually physically scrape that ledge and scrape the sides, because that will hold some resin, not the hardener, that you need to bring the resin up so it actually gets into the hardener. Just like that. I think that's looking about right. I'm not seeing any streaky lines or anything like that. So let's add it to our fish here. Let me see if I can focus a little bit better for you guys. Just like that. All right, and once you pour, you can't go back, so let's pour a bit of that down. A little bit more, yeah, whole thing. 2 capfuls, just like that. All right, and let's move it around a bit. Move it on the edges just a bit. A good way to... Okay, we have the resin poured, and this is how it is looking so far. I'm just gonna slowly spin it so you can see the whole thing. Just like that. Cool. We are almost done. We've only got a few more layers left. Even if we finish this guy, we're still gonna add layers on top of resin, so it's at a deeper depth. But otherwise, looking nice. I like it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Bye bye.